Welcome to my review of E-Swat for the Sega Genesis. And this is a side-scrolling action game was common during these times. And I would say it's mostly comparable to the original Shinobi or Rolling Thunder, but it's like, compared to the original Shinobi, it's like a more, detailed version of that game. It's not quite as sophisticated as... it's kind of similar to Shadow Dancer as well, but it's not quite as sophisticated as something like Shinobi 3 for the Genesis. It just feels like a simpler game where you just kind of switch planes. You're on the bottom floor, and if you press up and jump, you do a super high jump, and you switch to the next platform above you. Kind of like Rolling Thunder, Shinobi. It's a little bit more of a simple style game. But in this, you can at least take more hits, so it's not a one-hit death type of game like Shinobi. Original Shinobi for arcade. But you have your boss fights at the end of each level. And then, you just go through the stages. The second stage is a little bit of a maze, but not really, because there's little arrows and stuff that kind of guide you, so you can't get too lost if you follow them. But it's, it can be a little bit confusing. But that's about, the game is mostly very, very linear. But it can be challenging. It's definitely a pretty challenging game. Maybe on the moderate level of difficulty compared to games of this era. But definitely not an easy game. But I wouldn't consider it hard either. But it really depends on your level of experience, you know what I mean, with these kind of games. But for the average game of this time period, I would say it's probably kind of moderate. So if you're familiar with these type of games, it shouldn't be too hard with a little practice. Most of the bosses are very exploitable, which I did make a tutorial for the game. And in that tutorial, I break down, all the little cheap boss strategies and things that I used. And my strategy is just to beat the game. I'll walk you through the entire game. So they can be interesting even just for entertainment. You may find it just an entertaining thing to watch. So since it shows the full game, and it has a little bit of fucking commentary added to the whole thing. But yeah, a lot of the bosses are pretty exploitable. But now where the game changes is after, by the time you get to the third stage, you get a mech suit where you can now fly around. And that completely changes the gameplay. You have this powerful shot now, and you're no longer just switching planes from, the bottom floor to the top floor. Now you can actually hover for a short period of time. You can hover for a little bit of time. And you see me pulling bullshit here on this boss by hovering right above it. In this perfect positioning, the boss can't hit me. And I can just shoot missiles into it until it dies. A lot of exploits in this game, which, this will be a good tutorial if you enjoy that kind of thing, because you'll see a lot of exploits. And it'll make the game a lot easier. But the levels themselves, even when you know the exploits, can still be a little challenging. It takes some practice to learn the layout of everything and memorize the paths. You do have 5 weapons that you can switch between. So that gives some variety. You're going to want to use different weapons for different scenarios and different boss fights, things like that. This part is just kind of a little survival part on the platform where you have to wait for it to get to the top and try not to die. So for this boss, yet again, you can pull multiple layers of bullshit to take this out. And you'll see that here. I'm not sure if I show the full fight in the review, but you'll get the idea. And if you want to see everything in full, just check out the tutorial. But the boss fights are pretty cool, but most of them are extremely easy to exploit. But I still enjoyed them. There's plenty of challenging gameplay in the actual stages anyway, and the final boss is a little challenging too. This game also has limited continues, so it is a game that you have to learn. So you will have to actually practice the stages and make sure you have everything down, so you can get through the game without wasting all your continues. As usual, I recommend using save and load states to do a practice run of the game first, and just practice any sections that you think may give you some trouble in an actual run. And then start making full runs at the game. That really speeds up the process of learning these games. That's what I do for most of these games these days. This is a challenging level. It can definitely take some practice. Because you have a limited amount of time that you can fly, so you want to plan it right so you don't run out and fall into the electricity or something like that. So you definitely want to know what's coming up and have it planned out. Those pads that you stand on, you can actually charge your flight meter back to full, but the ones that are flashing will actually hurt you, I believe. So you have to watch out for those. This is a cool boss fight because you actually use the flight mechanic, in the gameplay. I believe they give you infinite flight for the boss, just for the boss, so that so that you don't have to land on the ground and you can stay in the air and fight it. But most of the time, your flight meter is going to run out, so you have to touch the ground and wait a while to recharge it. I think I used fast forward on the emulator to speed that process up at times as well, which I don't consider cheating because it's actually dangerous. If a stray bullet hits you, it can take off a lot more health because when you're fast forwarding, bullets will fly out rapidly. You have to make sure you're in a completely safe position when you charge it up if you're going to use fast forward. But it's basically just saving you from waiting around is all it does. So yeah, these later stages were pretty cool because they really use the flight mechanics in interesting ways, and keep things challenging. But I do like how the game kind of completely switches up by the third level where, you don't expect to get a mech suit where you can fly around and, you now have access to 5 different weapons. Prior to that, you just have a handgun. And you're on foot, you can't fly. So it's a big upgrade from how the game starts you out. So I thought that was really cool. And if you enjoyed Shadow Dancer, this game is more in line with something like Shadow Dancer. I would say it's pretty much like an equal quality of game to that. I wouldn't put it up there with Shinobi 3 or Revenge of Shinobi. I think those are just much better games overall for a variety of reasons. This game is it's a little simpler, I think, what I mean? It's not, but I mean, it is similar. There's definitely similarities, but I didn't enjoy it to the extent that I enjoyed like Revenge of Shinobi. The music is decent as well, but it's not as good as those classic games, you know what I mean? But the gameplay is quite good. It's a very solid, side-scrolling action game. And you pretty much get a good idea of what to expect from seeing this footage as I try to post highlights in my reviews. So when I edit through my playthrough, I try to pick out all the moments that kind of stand out, for the review, while keeping it short. So, you're seeing a lot of the highlight moments. So now if this looks like shit to you, you're not going to like the rest of the game because a lot of the moments, don't stand out as much as these moments. So it should give you a good idea of what to expect. I also usually show the final boss fights in these old games in the reviews. So I like to kind of give a full review. I know that's not the common practice with reviews, but I do things a little differently. So this fire move is actually your pretty much screen clearing type of move, but it runs out. You may only get to use it once per life or something like that. It's definitely limited. So this is the final boss. And it can be tricky initially, but it's really not too bad if you just stay below the boss and take your shots. The only real irritating thing about the final boss is that when he's near death, he's going to do this spinning move that pretty much sucks you in from very far away. Luckily, it doesn't suck you off, but it does suck you in, and it can do massive damage. See, he does that move. It's basically your special move, but it has a huge range, and usually it will hit you. It's hard to take him out without getting hit by that. But once he does that, he's dead, but he can end up killing you right at the end if you're not careful. I usually take the damage from his special, but you see I barely survived with 2 pieces of health left, and it was good enough. But it is dangerous. It does massive damage. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, I enjoyed this game a lot. I thought it was a good, solid game and one that gets overlooked a lot as a side-scrolling, action game on the Genesis. And I'd give this a 7 out of 10. For me, it falls in as a good game. I just consider it a good game. To me, it's not great, games that I consider great are like Revenge of Shinobi, Shinobi 3 are going to be in that 8 range and above. But yeah, this is just a good game. It's a good, solid side-scroller, and I recommend it. If you have any questions, let me know, and thanks for watching.